I want to talk about or build on the conversation from last podcast where we did a deep dive on the Vulture article that came out that a PR company, Bunker 15, was paying for positive reviews for their movies in order to gain distribution. So this got us thinking. It made us put on our tinfoil hats and we did a little research on what are some movies that potentially had critics paid off. And we made a list, and I think we're going to go one for one here. When I did my research, Flicks, I found that most of my picks, they're obviously franchise movies, big budget studios that really need movies to profit. And one of the ways that you said it last episode, audience goers determine if they're actually going to see a movie is through a Rotten Tomatoes score. And that's where the article talks about embargoes being withheld or limits on reviews from like the MCU with Quantum Mania and things of that nature. So Ricky Flex, let's do a list. What did you find in your research, I guess, before we hop into the first one? What did you any trends or patterns that you got from your research?
I think the big trend here is it's a lot of big franchise. Big franchise, big budgets, big money behind them, producing these projects, these production companies pushing these projects. They have some extra dough to fly around to the critics here. So I think my trend will be a lot of big movies, blockbusters that, do well at the box office. Will do well at the box office no matter what. So we think. So we think.
We suspect foul play. With that being said, Ricky Flicks, can you give us your first movie that you were suspicious of its Rotten Tomatoes status?
Has to be said. This has to be your first one that you wrote down too. Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, 79% certified fresh. My eyes are peeled on Marvel here. This is obnoxious. This movie is so bad. And I know it's in between Infinity War and Endgame, so maybe critics were just like coming off the high of Infinity War. But I could argue Infinity War is too low at 85%. I could say that wasn't high enough. But all in all, like the point is Captain Marvel should not even be close to 79%. And the audience scores of 45%. That's more where it should be. I agree with the audience here. 45 seems about right. But Captain Marvel had to be the first one I wrote down on this list.
A key denominator for a lot of these films that make my list is that the critic score is much higher than an audience score. The audience score is rotten for a lot of these movies that make the list, while these other ones are certified fresh. And that was a telltale sign with the 79 to 45% ratio here. But also the time that it comes out, 2019, we're talking between Infinity War and Endgame, talking about conspiracy wise, Marvel trying to keep up this hype engine after Infinity War to ensure that Endgame was even more profitable, teasing the hero Captain Marvel at the end of Infinity War, basically hinting that she's going to have this major impact on Endgame. I could see where also this female lead, like I think that was also 2 years after Wonder Woman. We have the Marvel being late to the game compared to DC in that regard. So to me, it kind of adds up where it's just I don't think it doesn't deserve the score. And we gotta say like, hey, potentially there was something going on in the background here. I agree. Good pick.
Yeah, like Marvel, like first female-led superhero movie. This needs to be good, not just from a box office standpoint, but from a quality standpoint, just coming off the back of Wonder Woman. Let's make sure that this is good critically. Wink, wink, because we're going to do well box office after Infinity War and the hype for Endgame. So, yeah, suspicious, Captain
Suspicious. And I think I want to piggyback off this and just go from Marvel to DC because I have something on the other end of the spectrum. And the most suspicious Rotten Tomatoes score, I'm going back to 2016. I'm going with the start of the DC Extended Universe expansion following Man of Steel in 2013, which is at a 55, 56%. Lukewarm reviews, to say the least. I find the Batman vs. Superman score of 29% to be more than suspect. Why do I say this, Ricky Flex? Well, DC trying to kickstart their own cinematic universe to compete superhero-wise with Marvel. This movie right? Featuring Ben Affleck, his first turn as Batman. It's coming off the Dark Knight trilogy. I just find it hard to believe that this many people soured on this movie when it debuted. And this is at the time, 2016, we're entering phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they are dominating the box office, right? And you think Batman vs. Superman would have hit $1 billion just with the concept itself. All right. But I think the negative reactions only made it gross around $830 million. I think that played an integral role here. And people say Marvel and DC, there is no rivalry between the two. I think there's stuff going on behind the scenes. I think and theorize that Marvel wanted to shut this movie down. And I would not put it past them to pay off a couple critics in the opposite end of the spectrum to negatively review this movie, because I was hyping this movie up when it came out, when the first Rotten Tomatoes score came out, and it was like a 26%, absolutely devastated. I was devastated. And then when I saw the movie, I'm like, okay, this is trash. It's not good. But really, like 26%, you are rating it lower than the Fantastic Four that came out in 2005? It's that bad? I suspect foul play.
Have some respect for Fantastic Four. A birthday party of mine going to see that movie. You're right. You're right. I thought you were actually going to say a different movie, DC wise, that time frame. Suicide Squad.
No, that deserved its Rotten Tomatoes score.
I was prepared to, do a little backlash on you there. But yeah, there was a total agenda here with Marvel versus DC, and also just an anti-Zack Snyder, anti-DC regiment here throughout the 2010s. Just to kind of like seamless transition, not to take your job, but I have one. Man of Steel. Man of Steel, going back to the first installment in this new DCEU, only at a 56%. That's not right. That's not right. Audience has 75. That seems about right. I personally would go up to an 80 out of 100 for my personal score, but 75 seems about right. I think this whole decade, Marvel just knew at the end of right when Iron Man came out, it's like, this is our chance. This is us. And there's an anti-DC agenda throughout the 2010s that they just assimilated into these critics, whether it was money or just marketing. I don't know. But Man of Steel, with a Christopher Nolan producing that amazing Hans Zimmer Fly score and a decent performance by Henry Cavill, there's just no way, and a pretty good Michael Shannon, there's just no way a 56% is justified here.
Yeah, and a lot of people argue it's because, well, during that time, there's a certain tone that the MCU has that works with audiences. But to me, like, critics can't see through that. They can't, like, there's movies that they review that are different tones all the time. Just because they got people flying around, they have to follow the Marvel formula. I don't necessarily buy that. I thought also this is produced by Christopher Nolan. It's a year after The Dark Knight Rises. Okay. And that movie worked for critics. It's hitting like at 87%. And tonally, it's not that different with a Man of Steel right here from a Zack Snyder. So the DC, it kind of goes in tandem there. Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. I think it was dead on arrival once those critics came out and they kind of shat on the two biggest heroes that this comic book universe has to offer. And to me, it's also like, we can't, like, from Marvel perspective, we can't let this movie take off, because if we are able to shut down a Batman and a Superman movie and like weather it together, then there's no way they're going to catch us. I just think there is some conspiracy to go around to say they crapped on this movie like before they planned on crapping this movie before it was even seen.
No doubt.
It's still not good. Like, I'm not saying Batman vs. Superman is a good movie. Man of Steel, I like. Batman vs. Superman is still crap. Ultimate Edition, definitely a lot better, more cohesive. But you can't tell me there aren't really awesome parts to Batman vs. Superman, particularly the action sequences and the one-on-ones between those two heroes. I think that is incredible, And I thought Diana with Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, an excellent cameo or supporting role in that movie too. I thought it does not deserve that score, but that's the one that was on my radar. What else do you think of Ricky Flux?
Yeah, so I did Man of Steel. I think another one that just has to be brought up is to kind of just venture. Do we want to stick with superheroes, or do we want to kind of venture away from there?
You can go wherever you want, dude.
We can come back to superheroes if we want, but that was a good little segment. But kind of connected to superheroes and Marvel. I'm gonna go another Disney product. Lucasfilm. And over my shoulder here, I'm going Last Jedi. It has to be brought up. 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, certified fresh, obviously. 42% audience score. This movie has a lot of junk in it. So for critics to be, even if you're not a Star Wars fan, like Star Wars diehards, Star Wars fans, yes, don't like this movie. Rightly so. But like if you're looking at it from a critic's perspective and you're looking at how good this movie is, there's a lot of junk here. A lot of just bad plot, bad themes that are riddled throughout this movie. Don't even get me started with the side plot, the subplot with Finn and I forget the woman.
I think it's Rose.
Rose, thank you. On that side casino planet, and then kissing at the end. Just the 91% is an egregious score for this movie. So even from just a critical, take away the Star Wars fandom, just from a critical perspective, suspicious score.
The giveaway is definitely the discrepancy between the critics and the audience. And a movie that is reviewed so well, and then for the franchise to then say, we're going to basically retcon everything that happened in this movie, very suspicious. And it showed, I guess, that Lucasfilm puts more stock in like the audience here. But when you had that separation, that's just massive in the backlash that came from it. And almost, I would argue, The Last Jedi backlash was worse than The Rise of Skywalker. The Rise of Skywalker, people kind of like knew the movie was going to be bad on arrival. I think people kind of realized like we have such a bad taste. We have kind of like dismissed the sequel trilogy once The Last Jedi was released. Once people saw that movie, they were out on Disney Star Wars films. Okay. Rogue One, good. Force Awakens, in my opinion, very good as well. Right. But once The Last Jedi came out, it's like, okay, we've lost faith and you could do anything. It will not repair the damage from The Last Jedi. That's where it's like, okay. And then that's where it seemed like it's a discrepancy. I think that's the biggest thing. You know?
Yeah. And that's actually such a good point with The Rise of Skywalker, because after The Last Jedi, like our expectations were through the roof for Last Jedi. The trailers were so electric. Like, will Rey go to the dark side? Like, Kylo Ren, was he gonna like finally build up to this like Darth Vader status? Snoke being like the new Palpatine. Like there was so much hype going into this, and the trailers were so good, and then we got what we got. So then when we go to the Rise of Skywalker, it's like we have to see this because it's the end of the trilogy. But there's the expectations aren't like, oh, Ryan or J.J. Abrams is gonna bring it all back home, you know? He's not gonna. We're not expecting him to save this franchise or save this trilogy, I should say. Like, we're just saying, all right, let's just get something formidable to wrap up this trilogy. And they couldn't even do that, but that's besides the point. The Rotten Tomato score is low on that, like low 60s. Fine with it, whatever. This is the one that has the biggest gripe with me, and that's most suspicious. Last Jedi.
Yeah. Like, it seemed like The Rise of Skywalker, J.J. Abrams came back on because it wasn't about making a good movie. It was about creating a satisfactory ending for the audience. That's what it came down to. And it didn't even accomplish that. People just did not care about this movie whatsoever. It's so forgotten in the Star Wars lexicon. I don't think I don't think I've seen it a second time. Honestly.
Me neither. I've just totally disregarded it.
Yeah, totally. Next. Do you want to go to my craziest one?
All right, hold on. Buckled up. I'm ready.
One of the most suspicious Rotten Tomato scores that I don't understand, and I don't know if it has to do anything with corruption. I don't think it has anything to do with people paying people off, but I want to know what this little bear has on critics. How are the Paddington movies always hitting 100% on Rotten Tomatoes? We're talking about suspicious. What the hell is going on with this bear? Why is he so electric? Why can he do no wrong? Every time a new Paddington movie, it scores a perfect score on Rotten Tomatoes. Comes again, it scored a perfect score on Rotten Tomatoes. This guy's overtaken Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh might as well be irrelevant because Paddington, he's on the throne, right? We did the draft of like the best movie bears. Paddington was on there. Must have been, right?
I didn't pick him because this is a great take. Paddington's overrated.
Why does this movie, actually, I think we actually excluded him from our draft, but why are these movies impenetrable? Why are they invincible? Why can they not be touched? I don't get it. No one can find any flaws. There is no contrarian to the Paddington Bear. Is he that lovable?
All right. Let me bring it down for a sec. You're absolutely right. Like the love for Paddington is ridiculous. I don't even know how it performs at the box office. I don't really know many people that talk about Paddington except that they're online. X fingers, Twitter fingers. Like I haven't met anyone that actually loves Paddington. That's obsessed with this bear. I've met more people that love Brother Bear than freaking Paddington. So I don't know. It's got to be something with just the bear-like live action thing. I don't know.
Just so cute, where him and his wee little boots and his rain jacket and his hat. But this is even made fun of in Massive Talent with Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal.
Paddington 2 is incredible.
Yes, Paddington 2. And
it's like, he's covered in bath bubbles. Like,
yeah.
So what?
These guys can do no wrong. And he's British. I think that's the thing.
British helps.
Bear's British.
Well, that's the weird thing. I've only seen the first and second one time each. I thought like he came from Chile, and he's British, but like again goes to London, like shipped over to London or something. It's been a while, but I don't know. The reason I've only seen them once because I think the movies are okay. Like clearly they're fine. It's just pretty formulaic. The fact that they have such high Rotten Tomato scores is shocking, and I think the director, God, having a brain fog today. But the
Paul
same director,
King, right?
Who is it?
Paul King. He's doing Wonka.
Yes, I was gonna say he's doing Wonka. That's when we get to see like, all right, can he get this like to a real movie? I don't think so. Suspicious.
Let's trade this guy a bear for an Oompa Loompa and see how he performs. Let's see how he does. Let's see what he's really made of. Yes. Yeah, I agree.
This is a good take.
Yeah, it's just Paddington. Very suspicious Rotten Tomato scores. It seems like those movies, no one can have seen them, and we just say, yes, they're perfect. You want to go? Let's go with another one.
All right, this is third one I wrote down. So Captain Marvel, Last Jedi, my first two, like, holy crap, obvious ones to write down. This one, all right, ends the first tier for me for like the most obvious suspicious scores. And that's Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. 77% certified fresh, 53% audience score. We did our rankings when Dial of Destiny came out, and I think we put this last. I wanted to do Temple of Doom last. Temple of Doom has also a 77% certified fresh, by the way. Audience score through the roof because obviously right after Raiders of the Lost Ark, the hype's unreal. Similar to Last Jedi, I would say. That's suspicious too, but we'll pass on that. Crystal Skull is the one where it's like, this is obvious. What are we doing here? 21st century, we can't be getting away with this. So Crystal Skull is my last like obvious tier 1 suspicious Rotten Tomato score.
And we talked about it. The Crystal Skull was released during Cannes, I believe. We talked about that. It was released during a festival, just like Dial of Destiny was this year. It wasn't received as poorly as Dial of Destiny, though. I think the Spielberg effect definitely a part of that because that was his last Indiana Jones movie. It's like it's impossible for Steven Spielberg to direct a bad Indiana Jones movie.
We can't disrespect Steven Spielberg and Indiana Jones.
Like when this might be the final time we get an Indiana Jones movie, we're going to crap on it. It felt like there almost was like a pressure to just say, it's good to have him back. It's good to be here, but then judge the movie on its actual merits. And like Shia LaBeouf sucks in that movie. I will stand by that. He is so awful in that movie. Just the approach to that character was awful. I think it's the worst Indiana Jones by a lot. To see that's certified fresh next to it, it's jarring. It's jarring. They didn't make the same mistake twice though, and it's almost gotten popular to like crap on legacy sequels. It's like where it's not, people don't give it credit just for coming back, right? Top Gun was different, right? That was one that succeeded, but like we're seeing a lot of legacy sequels now. But are they being positively reviewed? I don't think so. right? Like they usually get crapped on, especially in the comedy realm where they're trying to bring back even like Bill and Ted was like a good example that actually was successful. Like Dumb and Dumber, remember they had a legacy sequel? It's like you can't capture the magic. You try and recapture the magic. We're not just giving you credit for bringing these actors back. I just think the legacy sequel, it's harder to pull off, and people aren't just willing to give you flowers, just like almost like a legacy Oscar, like a type of thing.
You reminded me. That's another suspicious one. Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Yeah, it's like
82%
80. Yeah,
certified fresh. That movie sucks.
that's when no movies were coming out. It's like people like movies exist still. Like they're
That
still
was
new ones are
so
still happening.
bad. 65% audience, but that movie, like I put it in the 20s. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, just other ones are slipping my mind with the legacy sequel. I know we're getting Gladiator 2 soon. I assume there's gonna be a lot more effort put into that.
Yes.
And it's a overhaul in the cast too. It's not like where you have a bunch of returning characters. Very excited for it. Don't get it twisted. Next one. I want to go franchise wise. I want to go Venom. Venom with 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it's Spider-Man universe. It was the first movie in like the outside, the Sony Spider-Man universe outside of like what's happening with the MCU. Doesn't have a true Spider-Man inside of it. I think the movie was criticized heavily just based on that, you know? And I think people like didn't want to believe in this universe when it arrived, despite having Tom Hardy playing this character, this villain. People don't want to see this anti-hero like as the protagonist, as the villain, as the protagonist. And this is to me the best movie in the Sony Spider-Man universe, I believe, that we've seen so far. Because we have Venom, Let There Be Carnage. We had Morbius. Do we have anything else?
I don't think so. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Just like the Amazing Spider-Mans.
Yeah, those aren't a part of it though.
Yeah.
You know?
So yeah, that's it really.
Just like Venom getting crapped on like that. I thought there was some really cool one-on-ones between the symbiote and Eddie Brock. I thought it was genuinely funny. I think a lot of people also crapped on it because it didn't go with the full R rating. Instead, it went with the PG-13. But I still don't think that would be a reason to crap on the movie. You could say that could have accelerated and made the movie even better. But it's almost like, I don't know. It's almost like that Batman versus Superman effect where it's like you're trying to make something that's different and a little raunchier, a little more violent than most Marvel movies, and it's not going to work. And then you throw in that it's a part of a Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man. I think people hated on it before it even came. Yeah. So Venom.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think also a big part of that I remember during this time was the R rating and not having it. I think that really held it back because I think Venom and the villain Ride or whatever, Carlton Drake, Riz Ahmed's character, like they looked pretty good on the big screen. So you can't really blame CGI, in my opinion, for this score either. Is it formulaic? Yes. Does it have its odd parts like Eddie Brock grabbing lobsters out of the like at the restaurant?
Yeah,
and
quirky
like
scenes.
yeah, there are quirky scenes, but 30% is low. I would say like this is a little suspicious as well. Especially because again, Marvel doesn't want these movies to do well.
Yeah.
They don't want them to do well. That means MCU, like we're not all reliant. Superhero movies, the box office aren't reliant on this brand MCU of superhero movies. Venom, like not good movies. Oh, you know why? Because Spider-Man's not in them. We have Spider-Man. I'm a little suspicious.
Tinfoil hat here, thinking about it, Ricky Flex. If this movie was successful, let's say it hit like an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, the MCU would probably feel pressure to Disney would feel pressure to also cut a deal. Let's get Venom a part of this universe, right? Let's get Tom Hardy a part of this universe. But by its critical bashing and then box office actually did pretty well. I think it's hit over $800 million. But if this movie was successful critically and the fans like were very receptive of it and they went to the theaters to see this Venom character, there would be maybe some outside pressure to put him into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And here we just got him in No Way Home. We got him with the post-credit, but it's seemingly confirmed that he's not going to be a part of it. But the symbiote is a part of the MCU now, you know? So it's just like we're just doing like MCU is going to do whatever it takes to make sure it gets the parts of a story that they need without incorporating characters they don't want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like just the fact that this movie obviously critically is not doing well, but the fact that they're making a trilogy and they really want Tom Hardy's Venom in the MCU just shows like, Like there's fan interaction here. There's fan engagement. Fans want to see that. And particularly with this Tom Holland Spider-Man. So there is some pressure. Oh, let's just throw him in a post-credit scene for No Way Home and just acknowledge it, but also helps us out at the same time because now we have the symbiote in the MCU. Like we acknowledge it. We just don't have to acknowledge Sony at all still. So it's a win-win for them. So that's a great point.
And vice versa, where it's like the MCU doesn't want to share Tom Holland. They don't want to give him back to like Sony, and then they have to like deal with this dilemma of where he stands between these two universes. If Venom bombs, they're not going to be like, let's put Tom Holland alongside this crappy character in the crappy franchise he's a part of. You know, we're to keep him in the MCU. Okay, that was tinfoil moment.